Hello everyone again. I am Uriah Heep, and this is the Great American Novel Series brought to you by the Author's Matrix. And in tonight's episode, we'll be listening to Chapter 9 of The Village Idiot, where it looks like Jake Holzapfel, the evil one, is coming back. I see more trouble coming. We'll see what happens. Okay, so, without any further ado, we're going to move on to Chapter 9 of The Village Idiot. So sit back, relax, get a cup of hot chocolate, a cup of coffee, enjoy the ambiance, and listen to Chapter 9 of The Village Idiot.
Chapter 9. The remaining few weeks of the summer holiday had passed without incident. Neither Addison nor his mum attempted any conversation, while they occasionally passed each other in the house. Adele kept to herself as much as possible, and Addison was like a ghost whose presence you felt, but there was never any contact. He would try to leave the house before dawn and return well past his mum's bedtime, so they would always miss each other. Rather than being discouraged by the row with his mum, Addison was more determined than ever to effect the change on humanity that he felt so desperately needed. He lost his almost childlike notions that the masses would welcome his discoveries with open arms, as he had first thought, but now he realized that his life would grow increasingly complex. The fall semester at the university began without incident. Addison dutifully attended his classes while continuing his experiments in the lab under the cover of darkness. The more he studied the properties of sewage water and the pure, clean water he filtered, the more he was sure his discovery would change the world. Although Addison thought his research went unnoticed by the rest of the university community, that was not the case. Aside from a small group of fellow students and some faculty members gossiping about him regularly, there was Jake Holzapfel. There had been no relevant contact between Addison and Jake for quite some time, but he had been spying on his every move, unbeknownst to him, and he knew a great deal more about Addison's research by now and resented it. Jake shared the opinion of Addison's mum and thought he was loony. Surely, Jake reasoned, if there was anything to this water, his family would have long ago made the discovery and brought it to the masses that they looked down upon. Jake was determined to regain Addison's confidence, if possible, to discredit his work and ruin his life. Had Addison been aware of Jake's ill-intentioned motives sufficiently, he would have been more vigilant about gradually allowing Jake to work his way into his good graces. It began quietly, as evil often does, and Jake's seemingly change of heart slowly took in Addison. Jake made sure to accidentally run into Addison at the university regularly, even though they did not share any classes this semester. At first, he was cordial as he felt Addison's reaction to him. Addison was still furious at Jake for his impertinent and unwelcome intrusion into his family that helped to turn his parents against him. Over time, however, Addison softened his opposition to Jake, which gave him his much-desired opening, of which he took full advantage. "Hey, chum!" Jake yelled as Addison entered the cafeteria one morning late in the fall semester. He tried to ignore Jake, but that was often more difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to do. So Addison responded with a dismissive wave of his hand. That was enough for Jake to assume the welcome wagon had just rolled up to his home. "Grab some mutton and join me, Addison," Jake yelled across the table, where he had already eaten. Against his better judgment, Addison joined Jake at the table and was determined to finish his meal briskly and leave. Jake was overtly pleasant and tried to make conversation, which Addison initially resisted. "Do you remember when we got caught in Mrs. McGinty's backyard harassing her chickens?" Jake broke out in a boisterous chuckle, and Addison smiled too. It was that smile that Jake was looking for, and he pounced on the opening. "We had some good times, Addison, you must admit." That smile would ultimately lead to the ruination predicted by his father on his deathbed. "Look, chum," Jake said more seriously after sharing his recollections of Mrs. McGinty's backyard. "I have been a devil, Addison." Jake had never apologized to anyone in his life. He did not believe in regret. The sincerity in his voice touched Addison, even though it was not sincere any more than the politician who makes promises to get himself elected, then lines his pockets with the wealth of the masses, smiling at them all the time. Jake continued, "I was all wrong, chum." Jake continued, feeling that he genuinely had the opening he had worked for over the past few months. "If I could take back everything I've said about you, believe me, I would." "You spied on me, Jake, and turned my parents against me, and for what?" Now, Addison was furious. "I admit it, Addison." Jake fumbled for the words now. "I never should have." "The deed has been done, Jake," Addison continued, "and it cannot be undone. My father went to an early grave with your name on his lips." Jake realized that a simple apology would never suffice to heal their tattered relationship, and he needed to go further, and this was his opening. "I disparaged your work, Addison, but I've given it a great deal of serious thought these past months." Addison was surprised to hear Jake bring this subject up, and he paused, chewing his mutton. "I mean the water, Addison," Jake continued. "I think you may be onto something. I mean, there is a logic to it all." Jake was now damning Addison with faint praise. Addison's suspicions grew. Jake was someone who kept all of their praise under a barrel so he could save all of it for himself. Why was he praising him? Addison wondered. "I have thought about this long and hard, Addison," Jake continued, sensing that the opening presented to him would not last. "I have spoken with my father about your work. I hope you don't mind. He would like to speak with you and perhaps do an article about your research if you like." Addison was stunned and had no words in reply. He stopped eating and looked at Jake, waiting for him to break out in a mocking laugh that was so customary of one Jake Holzapfel. No laugh followed. Jake had practiced this speech for many hours and delivered it with a surgeon's precision. "I could arrange a meeting with him next week if you are available." Addison sat back and thought of the meaning of it all. He knew all too well that if the paper of record in the village of Crumbly and beyond to write a serious article about his research, he would be validated in all the land. The university would applaud his work, and his professors would praise him as a genius. Undoubtedly, research dollars would flow into the university, and before long, esteemed professors and deans from institutions worldwide would be at our university learning from us. Addison thought long and hard before he responded to Jake's statement. He studied his eyes carefully, looking for the slightest hint of insincerity, but found none. Perhaps Jake took seriously what he had been saying all along. After all, Addison reasoned, he was certainly on solid ground, and his research certainly bore out what he had been saying about the properties of water. If Jake's father would seriously want to know and understand his research and report it, there could be incalculable good from such a meeting. If Jake's father was dismissive or superior in his judgment of him, he could simply end the meeting with his dignity intact, and there would be no harm. "Why, Jake?" Addison asked. "Well, chum," Jake began, "I know your research has been scorned by anyone who has got wind of it, me included, but I asked myself, what if you are correct? Don't I owe it to myself and society in general to investigate?" Jake had never displayed this kind of sincerity as far back as Addison could remember. He had never cared a whit about anyone save himself. Is it possible that Jake has turned over a new leaf? After all, Addison had not interacted with him for quite some time. Perhaps, in the intervening months since their last disastrous meeting, Jake had somehow matured. Shouldn't he give him the benefit of the doubt if there were no risk in trusting him? After all, he, Addison, would control the situation. If Jake's father did not evidence the sincerity and respect he felt he and his research deserved, he would simply end the meeting and leave. After analyzing the situation, Addison decided to take Jake up on his offer and meet with his father at the Crumbly Village Times. "When can I meet with your father?" Jake Holzapfel did everything in his power to suppress a grin that was forcing itself to his lips, but he managed to hold firm. I can arrange it for this week, Addison. Please be assured my father will be greatly pleased to meet with you. As Addison walked home that evening, he debated whether or not to share this news with his mum. The two of them had barely spoken since their row months ago, and he wondered if this wouldn't be the perfect situation to reopen relations with his dear mum. It seemed to him that his mum needed assurances from outside the family about the efficacy and importance of his life's work before she could welcome it. How could anyone welcome new knowledge that has come into the world if they were the only person in the world that saw the true value of it? Addison wondered to himself as he trudged up the final leg of his journey home. If my work could be validated by a paper as prestigious as the Crumbly Village Times, surely my mum would find her way to welcome it too, Addison thought to himself as he opened the front door and entered more hopeful than he had ever been in his short life. It was a typical evening of late as Addison quickly retired to his room after briefly greeting his mum in the kitchen. She was cooking stew in sewer water for their evening meal, and the stench overwhelmed Addison, forcing him to retreat to the confines of his bedroom. After a brief interlude, his mum called him to supper, and reluctantly he made his way to the kitchen. Although he was starved, the thought of eating his mum's stew made him nauseous. "Sit, Addison," Adele ordered, accompanied by a sincere smile. "I have cooked stew, Addison. We never eat together anymore, so I prepared your favorite meal for tonight." Adele placed the fecal-laden stew before her son and relished feeding her only remaining son again. As Addison stared at the putrid mess in the bowl set before him, he quickly realized that the only way he could avoid partaking in this meal was to swiftly bring up the subject of the pending interview with the publisher of the Crumbly Village Times. Addison gently moved his spoon away from him and looked directly at his mum. He saw her pull back just a touch in anticipation of having her meal again rejected by an ungrateful son, and grew angry. "I have wonderful news, Mum," Addison said as he lifted her hands in his. Adele was surprised by Addison's statement, as she was expecting another row over her cooking with sewer water once again. Her rising anger quickly receded, and he awaited the following words from her son. "Yes, Mum," Addison continued. "I have the most wonderful news I could ever imagine." Adele's surprise increased, and she leaned forward to hear more. "There is no other way to say this, Mum," Addison began again, "but my life's work is about to be validated and vindicated by the highest authorities in all the land." Adele snatched her hands back, and her anger returned threefold. "Not this again, Addison!" she shouted as tears welled in her eyes. "Why do you torment me so? What have I done in my life to deserve this from my only remaining son? Can you answer me that, Addison?" Addison remained calm and attempted to return his mum's hands to his, but she resisted. "Listen, Mum. Once you hear the news, all will be well between us, I assure you." Addison's confidence seemed to calm his mum's nerves, at least for a moment. Adele sat back and seemed resigned to hear his following words. "I know you and Father feared I would be throwing my life away with my research, but there has been a marvelous change that I want to tell you about." Adele stiffened up, anticipating the worst. "I have spoken with Jake Holzapfel. I know we have had difficulties in the past, but I think Jake has come around." Adele looked puzzled. Adele wondered if this was the same Jake Holzapfel whom Addison resented so thoroughly just months ago that the very mention of his name caused an angry response. "I know what you're thinking, Mum," Addison continued, attempting to reassure his mum. "Jake's not a bad bloke after all I have found." Now Adele was positively shocked. She remained still in her seat, bracing for the following words out of Addison's mouth to pass his lips. "There has been a tremendous development, Mum," Addison continued. His inability to simply come out and say it frustrated his mum, and that frustration began to show on her face amid the sores, which had grown worse these past months. "I beg of you, son," Adele cried, "just tell me." Addison feared how she might take the news, making him hesitate. "Fear not, Mum," he blurted out. "Jake has arranged for a meeting between me and his father, Lord Holzapfel, the publisher of the Crumbly Village Times. They are to write a front-page article about my research into the properties of water and my purification system that will change the world." Addison was prone to exaggeration, but he could not help himself. While Jake had indicated a forthcoming meeting between Addison and his father, he never promised him a front-page article on his research. It was too late, as Addison had already blurted it out to his mum and could not take it back now. Furthermore, he reasoned, once Lord Holzapfel investigated his groundbreaking research into water, surely he would want an article such as this with a full-page banner splashed across the front page of his prestigious newspaper for all the world to see. Adele sat in her chair in the only home she had known for decades and was stunned into silence. She stared blankly into space as Addison remained motionless, awaiting her response. 1,000 things went through his mind in an instant. He thought back to his father and thought how proud he would be of his only living son at this moment, if he was here to relish the moment with the two of them. He imagined the university elevating his research to the highest possible level, and grants from all over the land pouring research dollars into the most critical research the university had ever embarked on, while he led the research team as he pursued his inevitable graduate work. All he needed now, he reasoned, was his mum's approbation, which he believed was forthcoming any moment now. If the Crumbly Village Times would publish such an article for all the world to see, then, Addison, my dear son, I would drink your nothing water, Adele said quietly. This was an excellent lesson for Addison. He finally saw the relationship between something being published by the press and the society accepting it. Without that recognition by the authorities of the day, new knowledge could not possibly enter the world and be accepted for its true value. This explained, he believed, the reluctance of the university to value his research rightly. If the learned professors and the dean were to see an article in the most prestigious newspapers, they would surely welcome it and finally back his research. He imagined Dean Bugg calling him into his office and lauding him with praise for his research. This, Addison reasoned, would be richly deserved on his part, and the dean would relish the opportunity to lavish him with this most deserved praise. After all, if one of his university students were to come to such an important discovery, indeed, that would reflect most generously on the dean himself. I fail to see why I didn't see this before, Addison thought while sitting with his mum at the kitchen table. This all makes sense now. The only reason my discoveries fell on deaf ears is because the powers that be didn't feel that they got enough importance from them. Addison was sure that fame would soon come to him, and his mum secretly shared the same illusion. Adele felt that if her son received that kind of praise from the respected press, she would surely benefit. Although she did feel a bit guilty as these thoughts ran through her mind, she didn't fight them. The two of them, mother and son, sat quietly, smiling at one another as these unspoken thoughts were tossed about in their respective minds. There was no serious questioning of the perils of such a meeting with the publisher of the Crumbly Village Times. Neither could see past the glory to the family that was sure to come.
So, Jake Holzapfel is back on the scene and is spinning his web. Looks like Addison may fall right into it. We'll find out in the next chapter. So, that concludes Chapter 9 of The Village Idiot. I am Try that again. I am Uriah Heep. Got my name right, huh? Uriah Heep. This is my literary cafe, and this is the Great American Novel Series, brought to you by the Author's Matrix. So, we'll see you next time, and we'll be going into listen to Chapter 10, and we will see what happens. Until then, goodbye, good luck, and we'll see you down the road. Good night.